When you deep dive into the world of your subconscious mind, you will meet the powerful creator that you are meant to be. Leave old and dysfunctional patterns behind. Have and become what you really want, and not just what you think you can. Develop a new relationship with the world and embrace your true destiny. Welcome to the Prosperity Mindset with Robertszentes. Hey guys, welcome back. I am extremely excited to be here today because I'm going to talk about relationships, more about relationships. And why it's exciting is because I see a tremendous need for people to really know what's going on. Some of the things I will mention might be a bit controversial to you. They are not, but you might think they are controversial. But I am saying these things because when you know these things, when you know what's really behind the scenes, what's really behind relationships, what's really behind a dysfunctional relationship, then you will see the logic of it. And I'm a very logical person, and I like you to understand that the moment you see the logic of the universe, which is very much the logic of your unconscious mind, then you'll see why you're creating what you're creating and what's really missing. Cool? So, welcome to the Prosperity Mindset channel. This podcast is for those of you who really want to create a good life. Now, if you think that everything's working out perfectly and you don't need any improvement, then this is not for you. But it is for you when you have been challenged with certain life situations, let it be financial, let it be relationship challenges, let it be health challenges. Then those of you that have reached a certain point of humility, then you are able to hear what I'm about to say. Okay? So let's get into it. Everybody's seeking to have a happy and a fulfilling and loving relationship. But if you look around, hardly anybody is really satisfied with their relationship. Would you agree? It is such an imperative, such an important part of our life to master the logic, to master the intricacies of a relationship. And yet it is so hard to find a good, harmonious relationship, especially one that lasts for a long while, because a lot of the teachings out there purposely have removed sort of the key ingredients from the recipe that you absolutely have to know if you want to create a good relationship. Now, why is it important to create a good relationship? Let's talk about that, and I'll break it down for you guys. Well, what will a good relationship give you? And this is not taught, by the way, in ordinary schools. They don't want you to know this. A good relationship will give you what? A good relationship will give you strength, will give you balance, will give you harmony. And also when there is a healthy relationship, a lot of your inner power, a lot of your inner subconscious programs get aligned, and the two of you become a mastermind. The two of you become a very powerful union. But since a lot of the outside programming, schools and religion, and you name it, the list is long, they don't want you to become powerful. So what they do is they tell you all kinds of false things about relationships, what it's about, what it's supposed to look like, what it should look like, and you have bought into them. So have I. I'm not saying that I didn't run into the brick wall or a concrete wall a few thousand times, but I only did that, and you're only doing it because you don't know what you're supposed to know. Now, there are a lot of conflicts around masculine and feminine energies. You see, a lot of guys are very insecure about themselves. This goes back centuries. There's a wounded male ego. Most men struggle with this. They don't even know the thousands and the thousands of intricacies that their ego is tricking them with. Why they feel insufficient, why they feel insecure, why they feel negative emotions, why they feel triggered in the presence of a certain type of woman, why they feel triggers in the company of a certain type of man. All of these triggers are feedback mechanisms for us to see that something in our unconscious world is unsorted. It needs attention. But if you look around, there's so much confusion around masculinity and femininity. And by the way, every single one of us has sort of a predisposed percentage of it. So some men will be more masculine than others, some will be more feminine than others, and the same thing is true for ladies. Some ladies will be more feminine and some will be more masculine. And these are not bad. These are part of your soul contract and part of your learning curve. So how did this happen and why? Okay, because that's the thing. That's me. What I like to talk about is why. I'm not much of a storyteller because I do have stories, but I like to tell stories that are actually healed, that are stories that show that you have overcome something. That's what I've been teaching. That's what I talk about in my expert coach program, is how to heal yourself and how to tell a different story, because you don't realize how many tens of thousands of layers of your subconscious blocks or behind your subconscious blocks you really are. And you can only see the world through your lenses, through these destructive subconscious lenses. And if you don't have the recipe, well, good luck. It's not going to happen to you. You're not going to learn this in school. You're not going to learn this in most families, because look around. Most families are just a mess, right? So what happened is that for centuries, maybe even thousands of years, humankind has been sort of given a false recipe. False recipe about wealth, a false recipe about relationships, how to build it, how to go about it, what are the typical roadblocks and what are the typical hindrances that you actually have to understand the recipe of, and then do something methodically to overcome it. Because here's the deal. If you don't change your approach, if you don't change your method to your relationship, to your finances, to whatever you do, you're going to recreate the same result, right? This is kind of the definition of insanity. People trying to get different results by doing the same thing. It's not going to work. But if you don't have the recipe, if you don't know the formula, you don't have a map which to go by, then you are going to be trapped in a substandard, a suboptimal circumstance. And if you look around, most families are clueless about relationships. Maybe 1 out of 10,000 couples are doing well. 1 out of 10,000. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe it's less than that. But also, if you look at a lot of the Hollywood movies, what they portray, what a woman should be like, what a man should be like, what a relationship should look like, it's downright scary. For the longest time before I learned this, which the subconscious stuff, the deep, deep, deep stuff started about 11 years ago, I didn't understand it either, but it really triggered me. It really, really triggered me when people acted blatantly stupid. Look at these Hollywood movies. Women act so disempowered. Women act so fake frail. Why? They act so hurt when something doesn't go their way. It's all unconscious wounds and false programming. If you are healed, you can't get hurt. If you are healed at the subconscious level, you won't be triggered. If you are healed at the subconscious level, you are not going to be flying off the handle and acting very incongruently and acting very ungracefully. So why is that? It's because I mentioned there's tremendous power in relationships, especially the healed ones. There's tremendous power in healed and functional relationships, and they don't want you to have this power. So they purposely dumbed humanity down. They created sitcoms where they laugh for you. They laugh before you can laugh. Hey, this is the line that, this is the punchline you're supposed to be laughing at. Can you not think for yourself? Can you not decide what's funny? But you see, you've been conditioned. So our job is to become aware of this crazy systematic conditioning and start taking steps towards a different goal. You need to change your orientation. You need to change your belief system. You need to really take responsibility for your life and start thinking for yourself. And also, when you look at a lot of these movies, look at a lot of the sitcoms, of course, I talked about them. I'm picking on these two because, they're very common and very domineering. The way they portray relationships between men and women is just ridiculous. The moment a man has to pick on or drop a negative comment about a woman, that's his unhealed, wounded stuff. Same thing goes for women. The moment she complains about her man, the moment she complains about men in general or her particular man or guy, whatever, right? That's her unhealed, unresolved stuff. But we don't know that until somebody like me brings it to your awareness. Okay, so you've been purposely misguided. You've been given a recipe that's not complete. You've been given a recipe that's tainted. And if you want to create a good relationship, you need to model somebody that actually has what you want. Very simple logic, right? But this is the problem. Hardly anyone has the recipe, the real recipe. Thus, hardly anyone has what you want. And that's why I've been teaching this for close to 11 years, showing people how to come out of these destructive, insane patterns. And more than 50% of these insane patterns are not even ours, not even childhood stuff. So many people like to talk about childhood stuff. Yeah, it's cool. There's some stuff there, but most of it is ancestral. Okay, most of it is cultural. And you picked up these things and boom, now you're running with it unconsciously. I remember when we lived in San Diego, California, we often went to a walk on the beach in Coronado. Some of you might know Coronado. Really beautiful, just absolutely stunningly gorgeous. And as we're walking on the beach and we saw many, many weddings, we saw these young couples, mostly military guys, getting married. And of course, once you know what we know, you would get the goosebumps too, because they have no clue what they're getting into. Okay? I'm all for relationships. I'm all for marriage. I'm a long-term relationship kind of guy. But I also see, when I see a person, I see exactly where the relationship is headed. And most of these relationships are not headed in a good direction. And then, of course, what happens a year later, they're wondering about why they're not in love, quote unquote. Where's that sweet guy? Where's that sweet gal that I fell in love with? Then come the kids. Things get even more difficult. And of course, very often ends up in divorce and more pain and struggling. So why is that? Well, the short answer is that if you really want a good relationship, you have to understand that it's almost like the opposite of what you think. A relationship is about 10,000 steps that you need to learn about and follow the recipe to. It's about 10,000 steps that you actually have to master. And very often, a lot of these steps are the opposite of what you think. For example, if your partner all of a sudden gets really, really upset, what is your instinct? Maybe to withdraw, maybe to take a few steps back, maybe to go out, to rush out the door. Whatever it is, it's kind of the opposite of what you're supposed to do. So I'll say it very simply. Say that your partner acts out something angry, okay? And then what is the instinct? To shout back, to get into an argument, to get into this unconscious power struggle. But what if I told you that what you're supposed to do is actually soften up and rush to their rescue? Okay. Now, totally different angle. But even if you rush to their rescue, you don't have the recipe what to do. Okay, back to the recipe, back to the formula. Because that's exactly what you're supposed to do. It's almost in every case, it's the opposite that you are doing. When I teach my expert coach program, which I developed for nearly 10 years, 10 plus years of all the thousands of client success stories and a lot of my own transformation, I train coaches how to become the best business, health, and relationship coaches. And one of the first things I say is this: 99% of what you believe and think about life and yourself is inverted. The opposite is true. You don't know what you're thinking. 95% of it is completely unconscious. But you have incorrect beliefs, and you have inverted thinking patterns because you have negative emotions. because people can trigger you, because people can really upset you, because you don't feel well, because your finances aren't sound, because your relationship isn't really flowing, because blank, right? You feel it. So 99% of what you think and believe about life, including yourself, is inverted. And that is why people struggle. That is why so much pain. That is why so much anger, because the recipe is incomplete. But the moment you start following a precise formula and you understand that it is something that you actually are supposed to learn and do, then you are now taking the reins of life, taking the reins of your own life in your own hands. Okay? That's pretty much the only option. Now, I've been teaching relationships for many years, like how to uncover what's really happening, why these two people came together, what are they supposed to learn, what are they supposed to do, what is the spiritual lessons, right? Most people think that a relationship is just random. Love at first sight, yeah. Right? Most people are clueless. It's a spiritual union. It's a spiritual union. Most of it happens because there was an agreement prior that you would meet and work things out. Again, work things out. Most people think physical working. Most people think talk more, communicate. But people have no idea what to communicate about because they have no understanding of the spiritual lessons that these two souls agreed to. Make sense? So whenever there's any kind of financial hardship or negative patterns, you might have picked them up from your parents. These are all became instinctual. And the problem is that if you don't understand the techniques, if you don't understand the spiritual lessons behind it, this domino effect will continue till the end of time. And what that means is that you are likely mimicking unconsciously and repeating patterns from your parents. You might even have the patterns from your grandparents. All depends on who you grew up with and what you either accepted or strongly disliked. Because even the things that you don't like, even the things that you say, oh, you know what, I'll never do this. I'll never, ever behave this way. You're still carrying the resentment about the particular story, the resentment and other subconscious programs about the particular event. And the problem is that if you don't solve these events the right way, they will pop up again and again, and your life becomes more of a push and more of a struggle. That is why so many people, if you read these posts on LinkedIn and Facebook and social media, and even if you listen to them, they talk about boundary time. Oh, I'll never let this happen again. It's all defense. It's defense because they are unhealed. But you can only heal when you have the recipe. And since nobody teaches people how to go about a relationship, what it is that you're supposed to do, how do you expect good results? How? It's impossible. It's almost like you've never seen anybody drive a car. Never. Then you get behind the wheels and the next thing you know, you hit every lamp post, you hop up on the sidewalk, you hit, you run into other businesses and create a chaos, a big mess. Because you have never been trained to drive a car. And this is true for relationships. This is also true for money. This is also true for health. All of these things are a byproduct of your subconscious thinking patterns. But your ego has been so heavily fed and so heavily conditioned that most of the time when you hear anything new, your ego will say, oh, I already have read about this. I already heard this. Let's move on. And what that causes is create even more ignorance, create more arrogance over time, because the ego is here to reject new information and reject transformation. And that's the way of the ego is exactly why people suffer today, why people struggle today. So if you want to change your life around, if you want to really create a good and high quality life, then you have to realize that you actually have to put conscious effort into it. You have to not just read books and listen to podcasts and listen and do all that stuff. Because 98% of what you really have to know, the deep unconscious transformational stuff, is never going to be found in those media or those forms. Okay? So, a lot of people reach out to me on a monthly basis. And, some are really nice people, some are genuinely curious, but most of them are arrogant and clueless. So why is that? That's all ego, right? They think they got it, but the thing is, you ain't got it. Okay? You really have to become humble if you want to change. Because if you don't change, then you're going to repeat the same mistakes over and over again, and you create misery and suffering for yourself. And we have plenty of that already. Now, the moment you become humble, the moment, even if it's not easy, okay? The moment you become humble is the moment you can be taught. The moment you become teachable, the moment you become coachable. And when you're coachable, when you're teachable, that's when you can start seeing that 99% of what you thought was true is not true. So it takes a bit of a shaking, and quite often people get to a point in their life when everything falls apart. They're on their knees, they're praying. God, what have you done to me? Why? Well, because you followed the wrong recipe. And the right recipe is either taught by good people or could be channeled in by your intuition. But your intuition has been tainted too. It's been switched off. You have thousands of negative emotions. You've got tens of thousands of limiting beliefs. You've got tens of thousands of internal subconscious conflicts. And you've got tens of thousands of shadow stories. So your intuition becomes almost impossible to listen to or hear out. That's why, guys, I'm telling you, if you want a good life, the only way, not kidding, the only way is to really start deep diving into your subconscious mind, find out what means what, start getting out of your need for validation. Stop getting out of this wounded self. Start learning how to heal these wounds, realizing again that 50+% of them are not even yours. And when you learn the right techniques, then you can rise above the fear. You can rise above the limitations. And then you can really portray true confidence. You can really portray an example that people are desperate for today. Most people are so scared. Most people are so lost. And the reason is because they have been running life without the proper recipe. Now, if you have the right map, maybe the latest, best GPS that you can really trust, it will pick up exactly where you are today. It will know your location, where you're starting from, and will guide you to your destination with ease. The GPS doesn't struggle. So why do we humans struggle? It's because we don't have this GPS. We don't have this up-to-date, state-of-the-art technology to give us the direction out of our current situation to something that we really deep down want. Okay? So the way to fix or heal your relationships is to really understand that you are there to help each other heal. Okay? You heard me say this before, and I'm not kidding. Do you know how to heal yourself? Do you know how to heal someone else? Most people have no idea. Most people are absolutely not trained in that. Okay, so that's the first step, how to heal each other. But you can't heal someone else until you heal your own stuff. And quite often, guys, this is a process that the two of you have to do together. But be mindful that very often what people don't understand is it's 10,000 steps, and it's not something that you are going to like download or read in books. It's not something that is just going to be handed to you. You have to study this. You have to learn it. So if you want a quick fix, that's going to be a quick mess. Okay? So here's what you need to do. Learn what creates a successful relationship. Then learn the necessary steps to go about it and start getting the results. And if you don't get the results, that's actually a good thing too, because then you see what is missing. You can find out about your blind spots. You could find out about a lot of these hidden stories that you had no idea that you had. I remember when Uli and I were going through our rough phase, and we had a few rough phases, okay? Everybody does. If you don't, then it's fake. The relationship is fake. So a rough phase is always an indication that somebody in that relationship is growing or is about to grow. Quite often it's both. But when we were going through our rough phases, I remember Uli was saying that she doesn't have this. This is not applicable to her. And then a month or two later, she realized how deeply applicable it was. So it's the ego that loves to tell you that you got it. It's already behind you. You've done, you learned this, you read this book. And arrogant ego. Put it in your back pocket, okay? Because your life's results are always in the subtleties. That's what I talk about in my book, Mastering Your Mind. Your life's results are always in the subtleties and not in the immediately obvious things. And once you learn to work with subtle energy, once you learn to work with not the superficial TikTok, blah things that everyone focuses on, but go underneath it, heal that stuff, then you're going to see the tens of thousands of subtle things that guide your life, the tens of thousands of things that create your reality, and the tens of thousands of things that you can actually apply to create an amazing life, including an amazing relationship. Okay, it's always the subtle stuff. It's not the superficial surface level stuff. This is where so many people are lost. It's subtle energy. It's the subtle thoughts. It's the subtle subconscious world that gives you the big bang. Okay? So guys, I'm always excited to make these podcasts because I share my own personal journey. I get to share my views. I get to share my own healing. It was a messy journey. If there was one person who made every mistake under the sun possible, that was me. So if you don't know how to do all these things, if you really want to learn it because you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, then you go to my website, which is advancedmindinstitute.com, and then you can find a scheduling link. There's a button there. You could book a call and then sign up for personal coaching, or you could take our breakthrough courses to give you the results or to give you the transformation that you're looking for. Okay, so it's amindinstitute.com. And realize this, just because you have had struggles, it was done on purpose. It was really there for you to grow. But if you don't have the recipe, your growth is inhibited by a fake or false or missing recipe. So I have the recipe. That's why I'm telling you guys to go to amindinstitute.com. And if you take your life seriously, which is, by the way, your obligation, then this is what you want to do now. So sign up for mentorship because that's the only true recipe that works. There's no such thing as a self-made man or woman, and you should know that. And your job actually is to grow as a person. And when you have overcome some of your life's challenges, then come back and teach others how to do the same. And the most important person that you're supposed to help is your partner in your relationship. So even if you had relationships in the past that had gone sour, or you guys broke up or you divorced, a lot of those stories, a lot of those unresolved conflicts are still with you. Okay, get this. They are still with you. You have created probably avoidance or some kind of protection or defense mechanism around that, but it doesn't mean that it's resolved. So that means it's still vibrating in you. It means that still somehow it's being pulled to you. And if you don't fix the root cause, then it will eventually crush you. So the right way to do things, the right way to really go about it is to find out, learn, and then apply the techniques at the subconscious level so that these stories stop looping, stop repeating themselves. And then your life, your health, your money situation, and particularly your relationship, since that's the topic here today, will also improve in remarkable ways, practically overnight. But it won't happen until you learn the subconscious reasons for your relationship challenges. All right? So guys, it was a pleasure to talk to you. It was a pleasure to do this podcast. And again, go to amindinstitute.com. And we are here to help you to really shift at the subconscious level so you can cut off the old misery and suffering stuff that you've been entangled with, and then create a more meaningful and more purposeful life, something that you could be proud of and something that your friends actually want to see you achieve. Catch you guys next week.